Good morning. Bonjour. C'est un plaisir pour moi d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui. I want to thank the organizers of today's event, this morning's event. It's nice to see so many people up early. I drove up from St. John this morning, and you know, it was a great drive. It gives you lots of time to think when you're cruising along and enjoying our province. I know many people weren't able to do that over the last several months or weeks with the flood situation and lost a lot of what they've had for many years and are in the rebuilding program. And I also know that how hard so many people worked to salvage what they have, and now the role is how do we rebuild those lives? How do we rebuild those memories? How do we make it easy for people to actually recover from a flood that was like no other? And how do we build the capability that we have in our province to deal with such natural disasters that used to be 1 in every 100 years and now are more like 1 in every 10 years. So we need to keep ramping up on our ability to respond. And you know, in some areas, and I guess I mentioned in talking about the flood, you know, I was talking to insurance experts or people that have worked in the system for a long time, and they had a unique perspective on the possibility, because so many insurance companies were saying, you know, oh, you didn't have flood insurance. You know that, don't you? And people will say, well, yes, I realize that. But most policies have wind insurance. And so we shouldn't give up on the fact that, but for the wind, many of those places would still be there or would not be damaged to the point that they'd be lost. So there needs to be a serious look, and I know we've been promoting that in relation to getting connected on the policies and looking at the information and saying, let's understand your policy. Let's see if there's a claim here that's related to the wind damage outside of the flood damage. So there's something there incrementally available. So in our province today, what do we have? We're spending now $1 billion more a year than we were 4 years ago. And I'd ask each and every one of you, what have you seen for that $1 billion more? And that $1 billion more in government spending is related to spending that's created by tax dollars. 700 to 800 million of tax dollars that are put in, that are taken from our pockets and put into the hands of government spending. Now, there's no secret that government spending has never been seen as the best, most efficient way to utilize dollars. And I guess that's been my mantra all along, that why can we continue and how can we continue to think we could spend more and get better. Now, I know there was some very strategic advice that came federally back a month or so ago, that the answer to our economic problems was spend more. And I know that everyone in this room certainly would not be in that camp. The spending more was going to get a better result. So how do we change that? I've been criticized a lot for my experience. You know, I grew up in this province. I grew up went to school in Canterbury High. I was born in Woodstock. I went to university here at UNB, graduated in mechanical engineering. My wife graduated with a teacher's degree. We lived in St. John. So, worked for a New Brunswick company, married my high school sweetheart. We have 4 daughters, and 4 of those daughters, 1 is here in New Brunswick, and the other 3 are outside. 1 in Bangkok, 2 in Ontario currently, and 1 in New Brunswick. And how many people have that same situation? How many people are in that same state? So I've been criticized for having a career in the province, having a career that I'm proud of and would like to see more people have a career in New Brunswick. I've been criticized for the fact that, you know, I actually look at getting value for money. I want to analyze every decision. I want policies based on facts, not facts based on policy. I want us to focus on what makes sense for us to get better. And you know, many times when I listen to whether it be an ad on me personally, you know, you do get so you just kind of washes off after a while. But I encourage people to look at it in detail and understand the facts. Because, you know, it's like an example. Here we example how this could be taken. Let's say I had a dog that could walk on water. And whoever is writing the ads on me would come to investigate this dog. And so they come and they look at the dog and they see it run across the lake and run back and say, wow. And the next day in the headline, it would be, Higgs' dog can't swim. So it would be missing the point. It would be missing the point of the whole objective of the exercise. Less than 8% of the time has there been anyone in government, in the Premier's office, that had any remote affiliation to business. Now people will say, well, government's not a business. And you know what? I beg to disagree. Government is not a business for profit. But any operation that spends taxpayers' dollars, it's critical to get value for those dollars being spent. And so how do we get better value for each and every dollar? Investing money, as the phrase goes, is only worth something if when you invest, you actually get results for that. Results that you can feel and see and hear. So here we are, record investments we often hear. Last place in economic growth. Spending at 3 times the current rate. The economic growth in the province has gone down steadily. We're last in the country. Health wait times. We are twice the national average. We're the longest wait times in the country when referred from a general practitioner to a specialist. In every category. In education, we're 8th, despite spending. We've gone from 500 million to 1.2 billion. And enrollment's gone down 17%. And we're 8th in the country. So why do we think that throwing money is going to solve the problem? In education, what has been one of the single biggest barriers to success? I claim this in every category. One of the single biggest barriers of success in our province would be politics and the political decisions outweighing the provincial decisions and people decisions. In education, the MBTA president told me that in the last 35 years, there have been 37 major curriculum changes in the Anglophone system. Now you imagine being a teacher in that world and trying to manage. Pretty soon, like many other things, many other disciplines, you just throw your hands up. So when I talk about government being a business, or being able to act like a business, it's getting value for dollars. And it's asking the professionals in the system, every one of them, that work in health, that work in education, that work in social services, to help us get better. I never had success in my life without a team working together. So why can't we come together as a team to fix New Brunswick? We cannot do that without better behavior politically, without a higher level of performance. And I'm excited about the quality of candidates that are running for that very reason. Because I'm tired of being in the last place. We even got the worst road in Atlantic Canada. Who would have thought that? Because road seems to be job one. But we got the worst road. So how do we change the tune? And when do we have job announcements that aren't related to a government policy or government money? When is the last time you heard a job announcement that did not have government dollars attached to it? And what is the problem? Why can't we make New Brunswick a place that people want to invest in? Because we have a better tax structure. We have better productivity and a working environment. We have people engaged in moving our province forward. We have somebody that holds hands with people that want to invest so that you take them right through every department. You don't get a message, not my department. I had a Korean gentleman who came to my office a few months ago, and he invested this, I think it was $75,000 to come and set up in the province. He had a 2-year timeline in which to start his business and get it up and running. So in about a year and a half, he got approval for his project. In the meantime, he had taken an MBCC course, was working at a car dealership as a mechanic. He got his approval in the, let's say it was in the spring and June. His timeline ran out at the end of September. Through the months of July and August, he bought his business. He got registered, he hired employees, he bought a house, he moved into the community formally, didn't get his application in to get his refund back. And guess what he got in October? You no longer qualify for your $75,000. Now, how did he feel when every requirement he made but to apply to get his money back? How many people did he tell, don't invest in New Brunswick? They won't support you. They'll take your money. When he came to the office, he was devastated. He said, I can't afford to lose $75,000. We called, he showed me the letter. We called the very individual who had sent the letter to him. And through the department, and the individual called back. And he said, oh, no, if he puts the application in, well, it'll be good. Well, I said, I'm reading a letter here from you that says he's disqualified. Well, I know, but if he gets it in, we'll deal with it. Why would you send the letter? Why wouldn't you call him? Where is the ownership to help people want to be part of a solution for New Brunswick? Take ownership to get results. Don't wait or look at the timeline and say, well, we can't do that. In the flood situation, we had in Darling's Island, a case where we actually saw this volunteer that was delivering people back and forth to the island because the roadway was flooded. And he had signs up, emergency contact numbers, all on a volunteer basis. Down the road 4 kilometers, sitting in the Widgewok Fire Hall, were 3 DNR officials They had a truck sitting in the bay, door was open, the truck had a trailer and a boat on it, 2 other trucks there in the yard, 3 individuals inside. He said, I went in, I said, what are you doing here? Why aren't you down there helping people get to their homes? That's not an emergency. We're not allowed. I said, you're not allowed. No, we're not allowed. We have to stay here. If there's a 911 call, we're there. We'll be gone. But unless we hear a 911 call, we're allowed to go. So how do people feel about paying taxes when the very people who want to help us are told, no, you can't help them? How many other stories do we have of people that don't make decisions that are common sense? The sense that gets us back into a future in this province is making decisions that make sense. Meanwhile, Uber Rob is transporting, hundreds of people back and forth, and they're feeling really, really good about it. So how do we start a change in philosophy? A change where we don't have a continuation of just throwing more tax dollars, but a situation where we see more private sector investment. Over 90% of the investment in the province right now is private sector money, is public sector money. Over 90%. So any job growth you'll see is job growth that's either temporary or job growth in the civil service. The number of civil service employees is up, the number of private sector is down. Now, what's that mean? Who's paying that bill at the end of the day? We need more private sector jobs to pay the cost of service for New Brunswick. That's where the money is going to come from, and we need to do that. We need to focus back on rural New Brunswick. We continue to bypass. I am done bypassing rural New Brunswick. I want to see our businesses flourish in little businesses everywhere as much as possible. But moving people around through our province and bypassing our communities is not going to solve that. I want to develop in areas that make sense. I announced a few weeks ago that we were open to look at the shale gas development in areas and regions that wanted it. Sussex is one such region. Albert County is an area. Let's look at that. Within 24 hours, Corridor announced they'd be back. $70 million investment in the province. That was in 24 hours. When I spoke about Energy East, I spoke to Scott Moe, and I asked him about, there were 2 things actually. One was about the carbon tax. Like, we want to be an intervener, working with him to fight the carbon tax. We want a carbon plan to meet our emissions. We don't need more tax. Remember how it started out? It started out as a revenue neutral. Then it went to, it's going to be for environmental projects. And now it's general revenue. Well, we know what that is. And it was deferred for 1 year. How convenient to be deferred for 1 year through the election period. And then January 1st, if nothing changes with the current government, on January 1st, the carbon tax will be implemented. We will fight that every step of the way, because we don't need more taxes. We need results for the money we pay already. Municipal tax reform. We've talked about it. We need communities to have more ability, have more control over their funding model, and less control centrally from government. And I see a huge opportunity to do that. I've talked about the double tax system and how does that compare with other provinces. Right today, it's something that is unique to New Brunswick. So we're looking at that with the eye of making it a fair comparison, make taxation fair, make municipalities have control to manage their tax system, to do what's right for their communities. And on that same vein, looking at the province's several economic models that could be what is right for this region. Not communities competing with each other for issues, but communities that actually are developing what makes sense for them and working with those local officials to make that happen. I see the potential, because we need everybody in the game. And when we talk about people graduating, when I mentioned the education system and our academic scores, I also found, something that's unique for New Brunswick is that we don't take advantage of the fact that we are a bilingual province. I spent my career in southern New Brunswick. I traveled from St. John to the Woodstock area and out in the East Grand Lake area, and had a camp there. My mother's still living there, and I visit there as often as I can. So I never really experienced much about the northern part of the province until I got into politics. And I started traveling around for the last 8 years. And one of the things that really strikes me is when I meet and I go into communities and they're speaking both languages back and forth, and it's great to see. When you see that, people are talking about everyday issues. They're talking about their car, they're talking about their kids, they're talking about the coffee's too hot, or I didn't put enough sugar in it. They're talking about why the Toronto Maple Leafs didn't make the cup again this year. They're talking about everyday issues. And what do we teach? We try to make it difficult. So they're speaking a conversational communication back and forth, and we're teaching an academic program in the school system. Math, sciences, calculus, Pythagorean theorem. But what kind of fun is that? My kids took the French immersion program in late immersion, and it wasn't fun for them. And the last time it was in grade 1, less than 10% made it to the end. The last time. And what did we do? We moved it back to grade 1. What kind of success is that? We need to change the dial, and you know how we do it? We ask teachers what works. We ask teachers what a classroom should look like. And what should the composition be? What should our curriculum be? All we need to know as politicians is what should the outcome be for a graduating student, and how does that compare? And can we teach a language that's fun, so we can get everyone learning both languages in our province? Because it's a social exercise, it's an interaction, it's a cultural experience. It's something that makes it fun and makes our province special. We have lost that through our inability to continue to not change a program that will be meaningful for the province. And in the meantime, when we're graduating less than 10% of our kids that are bilingual in the Anglophone system, we need to rethink our hiring practice. We need to understand, you know, it's not good enough to have our ambulances parked alongside the road because we can't find the language requirements. I mean, think about that for a minute. How many people would say, well, park the ambulance, instead of, well, we don't care. If you've got qualified people, get them in it. So why don't we start a policy where we hire for skill and we train for language? Aging care model, we're building 10 new nursing homes. And how many people want to go to a nursing home? I always ask that question, and I don't get many people raising their hand. The money we're spending on bricks and mortar, I want to cut ribbons on results. I want to cut ribbons when more people are able to stay in their homes. When we build a healthcare career from home care services, we allow our people moving into that profession to actually train, to get better salaries, better rates, so it is a career. And they can move anywhere through a healthcare profession. It is one of the single biggest challenges we have demographically in this province. And we are ignoring it by thinking that we can just build more nursing homes. There's always going to be a room for a certain number of nursing homes. There's no question about that. But we're only increasing the total capability by about 40 to 45 a year. And 2 years ago, the requirement was going to be 6,000 more by the end of 2030, I think the time was. And we're doing it about 40 a year. So change the model. Nobody wants to be there anyway. Change the model. My mom is 97, living away out in the country, about an hour from the Waterville Hospital. And many people say, well, why, you know, your mom shouldn't live out there. She's 97 here. And when I call mom and I say, Mom, should you be living at home? Or where else am I going to live? And I said, well, it's just your choice. My choice is staying right here. And she's 97 because she is right there. And that's where we'll be. When I talk about government service, and when I talk about the idea of being like a business, we should be measuring how we get better. I've found that good people want to be measured on their performance. They want to show how good they can be. When I was in government, I saw people there that want to show how good they can be. They want to be part of a solution. And all we have to do is raise the bar. I had a lady there what I complimented regularly on her performance, how keen she was in doing so many great things, work ethic beyond what I was ever used to. Been there 22 years. And I said, how do you maintain this level of intensity, knowing the volatility that had gone from government after government? She said, this is one of the first times that government has ever asked for my help. And we were making things happen in our department. We were building succession plans. We were building owners of results. People were engaged. So isn't it sad that in the time that we were there, in 10 to 14, and she'd been through 22 years to that point, one of the first times she'd ever been asked for our help. Well, who do we ask for help? Do we invent it on the bus? Oh yeah, that's the typical process. There will be no invention on the bus in this election. In this election, we want to hear from communities and what's important to communities. What does a different government service look like to you? How do we define a better result? How do we define whether it's going to the service in Brunswick and getting in and out in a hurry, whether it's going to the ER room and getting in and out in a reasonable time, if it's going to a specialist and getting in, or GP and getting into a specialist within a fair, reasonable time, because the last in the country is not good enough. 36,000 people we have on social assistance. 30% of them are under the age of 18. And when I asked individuals in that world, how have we been over the last number of years? Well, about the same. Well, being about the same is not the goal. Being better is the goal. And defining what better means. So next year, 36,000, the year after that, 35 or 34 or 30. We get on a program and if people aren't getting results, we change the program. But we change it to get results. We don't say to people, people often say, oh, well, where are you going to cut? It's not about cutting. It's about getting value for every dime that's spent. And if you're spending money and you're not getting any value, well, we'll talk. Because that money can be used to get results. And that is the goal, to get results in everywhere we go. I am focused on us having a better province. I've seen the potential. I'm not here for the goodness of my health. I'm here to work with people and teams to get a better province. The difference between where I worked before in my career to what I've seen in government is we should all be on the same program. We should all want a better healthcare, a better education, a better social system, better roads, better highways, a tourism strategy that actually gets tourists off the highways and into our communities. We need to do this together. So this election is going to be different because it isn't going to be a Promise Me More program. It's going to be a Commit to Better program. Well, I hit it in concert, so I heard you hit it again. That's the engineer coming out of me. The idea that we can vote this time, you can vote for, a party, or you can vote for the province. We have engaged people that were in different parties, were in different, never been involved in politics, because they see the sense of urgency. I see the sense of urgency. My wife and I, when we spoke about me getting involved in this to begin with, when I ran for the leadership, I ran on the policy that politics is the single biggest barrier to success in our province. I ran on the fact that province first, politics second. We will run a campaign on province first, politics second. The colleagues, the candidates that are coming forward are concerned about the province. They're concerned that this time we have to be different. Well, we will be different in a way that you'll say, it's about time. It's about time that somebody talked and did something that made sense. Thank you so much for being here.
I have a question, Blaine. A few years ago, I think it was under Sean Grant, who was embraced by Allward, about poverty reduction initiatives. And a lot of those were some pretty good ideas there, but then it seems to have fallen off the radar. Can you talk about what you plan to do about poverty reduction?
So when I looked at and asked different groups about, and in fact in St. John, which is a known issue, in the city, I asked about, okay, give me some stats on what has improved in the last 10 years. And those stats were hard to come by. There were some general areas of, okay, we're focused on this, and we got some indications of improvement. But I was told there were, I was told over 50 different agencies working on poverty reduction. And I was also told by different groups that, I spend more time getting approval for my funding next year than I actually do in dealing with the issues and how many people do I get off the system, get out into the workforce, and make it happen. So I think we have, and that's an area where I talk about, we have lots of money flowing out there, but we have no idea what it's accomplishing. And so you take a region and you do a pilot and you love to just put it on the board and say, okay, how much money do we have coming into this area? In how many different ways? Because everybody goes after different departments. So there's always a piece coming from another department, this department, that department. So you never get it all together and figure out where's it all coming from and what is it achieving. So my goal is to take the pot, look at it, and understand what each group's goal is. Clearly, what's your goal? And the goal's got to be, in the social assistance, is maybe you say if you got 18% that are less than, or 30% that are less than 18 years old, you basically say, well, those are the focus groups. There's where we head. Because if someone's been in it for a long time, you're probably going to have trouble making a dent there. But target the root cause and how you get people off it, and focus on the teams that are showing a reduction. By reduction, I mean an improvement in getting people out into the workforce and on a self-support program. And the ones that show success will get my full attention and my full support. And we'll define success as people getting a better life out of it.
Mr. Higgs, I noticed that the first item on the Chamber's list of priorities was responsible resource development, and you mentioned the shale gas moratorium. Well, not only New Brunswick, but all the other maritime provinces, plus nearby states like New York and countries, Ireland, Scotland, our allies, France, also have moratoriums or bans on the fracking process. And they've arrived at them after extensive review by experts, by public health officials, by citizens. Since they all went into effect, there have been well over 1,000 studies that pretty much validate all the fears that people had about fracking in areas such as water pollution, air pollution, and especially public health, with a lot of problems, particularly amongst infants and children. So, in the light of all that, I wondered what evidence that would be presented and what process you would go through to lift the moratorium and convince New Brunswickers that these risks that all these other places have validated no longer exist, whether it's in Albert County or Sussex County or anywhere else. Thank you.
Well, thanks for your question. And there was a recent study just done in the U.S. talking about and I can find that because there are as many as you talked about that are saying, oh, we're opposed to this. There will be an equal number or great number that are in favor of it. The other issue is related to the number of states that have been doing this for 50 years, 40 years, and are still doing it. So that's a fact. And they've been doing it a long time successfully, and they're still doing it. And that's throughout North America and throughout Western Canada. And we can continue here to say no to just about everything, or we can find a way to move forward in a sustainable and a meaningful way. Because saying no to private sector investment and saying no to anything but more tax dollars is not going to sustain our province. So I'm not going to find reasons to say no. I'm going to find sustainable and effective ways to do what's right in environmentally safe and environmentally sound and a practical way forward. But I won't, and in communities, that's why I'm not saying province-wide. We're not talking about that. We're talking about regions, that we review the region, we review the situation in that region, we review with the councils, the municipalities, and we say, okay, what makes sense? Well, in the Sussex region, they've had 15 wells for about 15 years or something like that, and have had great success. But others have had it for 50 years and 100 years, and I know about 150 years. So there's adequate research, and there's adequate reason to move forward in a meaningful, controlled, and effective way.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I'm going to continue on the whole concept. You recognize at the beginning of your talk all of natural disasters that have happened here in New Brunswick, and I think you realize that that's happening all around the world, and you know that climate change is at least part of the reason for these natural disasters. And I assume that you know that credit agencies are now looking at climate change as one of the factors, right? I also assume you know that natural gas was once considered a bridge to, new energies, but it's no longer considered that. Methane released from shale gas is a terrible factor, a really strong factor in the changes in our atmosphere. And I bet some of these young people know that. And they're contributing to warmer greenhouse gases, even more than coal. I guess when you said that you wanted policy based on facts, I really would like you to look at some of the research that I've read. I'm a former teacher, so I read a lot. I would really appreciate you reading that. And I would like to know how your policy on shale gas, how does it fit into anyone's plans to fight climate change? Thank you.
Well, climate change and dealing with climate change, which yes, we've seen significant changes in our lifetime, with I mentioned 100-year events going to 10 years. And there's a number of factors that go into what's changing in our environment today, and this could be one of them in terms of emissions and the conditions that surround that. But we're not away from, we can't shut the tap off, and we can't just say, well, we're going to stop there, because how many people here would say, well, if we go to wind and solar, and we're going to be in a position where we have to rely solely on that, how many people are going to say, well, I'm ready for a 50% increase in my energy cost? How many people are going to say, okay, let's do it? So if we ask that question, how many people are going to say that? The carbon tax is going to increase gas prices and heating oil prices or heating energy prices. How many people are going to say, well, that's great, that's good? Because we're, at the end of the day, there's a balance. At the end of the day, where is the money coming from? So, you know, it's a managed process, and I'll look at every fact, but I encourage you to do the same. Because it's not one-sided for me or you. And if we look at all the facts and we mitigate our risks, we mitigate our, and make it anything we move forward on as sustainable and as environmentally friendly as we possibly can. But life, you know, life is a situation of making decisions. And I wouldn't have driven up here today if I was so afraid of an accident that I said, well, no, I choose not to come on phone. We all have to make decisions, and for me, they're balanced decisions. No wholesale issue, a balanced approach. Balanced move forward, but saying no to economic growth, resource development, in a country that's based on resource development. In the Energy East program that has been ignored here, $4.5 billion bought on private. I mean, I think that's atrocious for a company and the government to buy out the pipeline of Kinder Morgan. I would never ask them to do that for TransCanada either. All they needed to do with TransCanada, who'd already spent $800 million, was actually look at the application. And what was that going to do? It was going to force government to make a decision, but they never accepted the application, so after 5 years, TransCanada never even knew when the decision would be made. Now, how does that encourage private sector investment? And what was that going to do if it came through? Displace foreign oil that's coming into this country. So park our natural resources, park the ability for us to pay for the services we want. How do we deal with that? I mean, let's just lay out a program that has a sustainable path forward.
Good morning, Mr. Higgs. My name is Anthony Knight. I'm the CEO of the New Brunswick Medical Society. Great to have you here bright and early, and good talk. I was glad to hear you talk about seniors care and also access to specialists and how patients can access their family doctor. In terms of seniors care, I know you made some reference to seniors maybe not wanting to be in a nursing home, but in fact, in our hospitals, 25% of hospital beds are being occupied by seniors who don't need to be in hospital, but actually need to be in nursing homes. In fact, 40% of that 25% of our seniors in our hospital beds are seniors living with dementia. People with dementia obviously can't get in. And so we have many seniors who require enhanced care and enhanced services. So investments in nursing homes are important elements of our overall care strategy for seniors in New Brunswick. You also made mention of access to specialty care in our province, and certainly not only in the last 4 years, but the last 8, 12, 16 years, we have placed near the bottom in terms of wait time for specialty care. So that's not a 4-year problem or even an 8-year problem. What we believe needs to be done is to fill every vacancy that we have for specialists in our province. There's presently 75 specialist doctor vacancies in New Brunswick that are funded and available right now. We will be calling on all the parties to commit to funding and committing to finding doctors for those vacancies in New Brunswick. Further, we need family doctors to work to launch a program with the current government, and we would hope that if you take power, that you would support and continue that program to ensure family doctors are working in teams, available at night and on weekends for their patients, and connected through technology. So I wanted to share that information with you this morning, and would welcome the reaction.
Thank you, Anthony, and absolutely a continuation of any program that's working is first and foremost for me, because part of the issue of any government has been thrown out what the last one did and started new. I mean, nowhere is that more pronounced in the creation of the economic development models. And in a group like this in the chamber, you must be sick and tired of that, where you see an economic NB, and then you see an invest NB, and then you see an opportunities NB. And so every new government invents its own new buzzword for calling it something, changes the players, moves it around, and the last thing that's ever considered is what was accomplished and who was accomplishing it, and how do we contain that or continue that momentum. So for me, any activity in arriving as a new premier would be to sit down with the department and basically say, what's been accomplished in the last 4 years? What are your targeted areas of performance? Where do you see an opportunity for us to focus in order to continually improve that? And so that's where we're on the invest side, but I'll come back to the nursing home.
Well, I was just going to say too, I know you said you were going to listen to the teachers. I just hope you'll listen to the doctors too.
Oh yeah, but you're right. You're absolutely right, Andrew. But I think for me, people have to look at our province as a whole and say, throwing more resources at it may be needed in some areas, but may not be needed in other areas. Throwing money and say, oh well, our solution is just throw more money. I don't believe that. I believe we're taxed out. I believe we're spending enough money per capita in this province to get better services. If I look at the investment in nursing homes, I remember one of my first visits I had with the CEO of a nursing home, and she set me up with like 25 of the patients there. And I spent 2 hours talking to them about everything. And on my way back to her office, she says, how many of those individuals do you think should be here? I said, none. She said, you're right, not one. So how many situations do we have where they can't get out of the hospital because they're in a nursing home with no other place to go but stay in the nursing home, when they could have a lifestyle in their own facility that provide the services provided through a home care professional that can actually visit as needed, because many people in nursing homes that are there. If you look at a current situation and then you look at the number of nursing homes needed, let's look at the Miramichi. I mean, 11,000 signatures were presented not to build that new nursing home. The current nursing homes that were there said, I can do what's being done here for $60 million less and provide for the same number of people. Not interested, didn't do it. So when do we make decisions and get value for money? And in the case of doctors and looking at, well, let's look at billing numbers. Let's understand, why are we the only province in the country without billing, with billing numbers? Why do we have that? And what restrictions does that put on us? So let's get a serious discussion on that, because I want to understand anywhere, why are we different? Are we different in a good way? Or are we different because we just won't change? And let's make the changes necessary by the people that know what's required, with the end goal of providing better service to our taxpayers.
One of the challenges that business faces is the increased cost of doing business, and that takes place in various things, but a challenge that we faced in the last couple of years are the increased worksite costs. We're wondering how you think that a solution can be found to 33% increase 1 year, nearly 20% last year, and projecting another big increase this year. Where do you see a solution in that?
Well, it seems like the whole worksite process is out of control. This situation and 30% increases has only happened in the last 2-3 years. So what has changed? I know that about 93% of all the claims are being approved, and we're retroactively approving past claims that were not approved. So what is different? What has caused that, and how are we unique? I understand across the country that it's on average is usually about 80% or 85% of claims that are approved. So why has ours all of a sudden jumped to 10% increase, which has then gone to download it onto the businesses? So I want to understand exactly, what caused this. Are we doing right by both employer and employee? Do we have a system that is manageable in relation to what other businesses face in other provinces? And are we able to afford a proper WorkSafe program? Just continuing to raise the rates and not manage the system is not acceptable. It's just like everything else. You just can't keep throwing money at it and hope it'll get better. So I think there's a solution there, and I think it look at each case, compare them with each province, how a decision is being made, what is the criteria for acceptance of claims, and really start to manage that system.
Hi, good morning. Just want to thank you for your remarks. My name is Brianna Workman. I'm the president of the St. Thomas University Students Union, as well as the board chair of the New Brunswick Student Alliance. And so you commented on education a bit more generally in your opening remarks. I would like to speak a little bit about post-secondary education, of course. And you also just mentioned in an answer to a question, continuation of programs that are working well. And so I have kind of a two-part question. The first one is, One program that we have seen that does improve the access to post-secondary education and that is working is programs like the free tuition program and tuition relief for the middle class. So the first part of my question is, what are your party's policies and plans with regards to those types of programs? And the second part of my question is about, you commented on youth leading the province and that type of situation. So I was just wondering any plans you have for youth employment and areas in that nature as well.
I guess in relation to the free tuition program. So here's a program that was put in place and put in as a program that was going to help students go to university who otherwise wouldn't. It was put in place at the backs of I think the number was like 40,000 students and families, and taking away the tax credit. It was put in the backs of kids not being able to get a rebate on their when they graduated to help stay in the province, a rebate on the tuition. And it netted the province $25 million, a minimum of $25 million. So here's a program sold as a social program as such that netted the province $25 million by taking the tax credits and rebates away. So you indicated that it's working. And I guess I would ask, what is the definition of working? Do we have more students going now than we did? I remember university officials saying, this is a great program. It'll help those students that are currently going today to university. Well, that wasn't the target. The target was people that weren't able to go to university. I believe that every student in this province should have access to money to go to university or post-secondary education of any kind. I believe they should have the right to go to whichever one they choose that's accredited university or post-secondary institution. So in other words, the funding could follow the student in that sense. So the student makes the decision. I believe that we need to know, is it working? And we need to know who is going today that could not have gone before because they didn't have the money to do so. The program has to be about someone's want to go to a post-secondary training, their need to go to further their career, and to move forward in a way that they have some investment in the process, meaning their interest to do so is more than I could go because it's free. I could go because I want to do this. And we need to be sure that that possibility exists. In relation to job employment, I could stand up here and promise 10,000 new jobs. And some of you may walk away, so that's great, 10,000 new jobs. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, many times people don't even ask. They just say 10,000 new jobs. And how many new jobs announcements have we heard coming soon? Coming by 2020? Coming by the next 10 years? We'll have them, this is a 10-year program. It's going to be starting after the election, 2020, 2018, the fall of, or 2019. Coincidentally, after the election. That all these things are going to happen. So I believe that, things like the one-job pledge, things like that are giving tax rebates for people hiring, I think they're good programs. And I think we need to encourage ways for people to find a way to hire somebody else. And you don't do that by saying, well, there's an election coming up, so I'm going to raise minimum wage. You develop a formula for minimum wage so businesses know when the increase is coming. They basically can say, what, the economic conditions are here, the cost of living is here, minimum wage has gotten behind, it's going to be raised at this time. So businesses can plan on it, employees can plan on it, and it's a process taken out of the political abuse. Because what it has become is, it's an election, I should raise minimum wage. People deserve a raise in minimum wage when the time is right, and not based on it being an election cycle. So I think there's many ways we look at businesses to allow them to hire more people. The red tape reduction, every government talks about it. And I know at the time, we were reducing red tape according to CFIB. We got better marks every year. And then the team that was working on that were fired, thrown out. And the marks have gone down after that. But more importantly, I would say, what have you seen in your business about red tape reduction? Because if the ratings are such and we're doing well, but it doesn't affect you and your business because this thing that you keep spending all the time on that government requires is you can't figure out why we're doing it, those are the things I want to get under the hood on. Those are the things that I want you to say, why do I have to send this form in? Nobody reads this. Why does it ask all these questions? Nobody ever looks at that. And how can we make those changes so it's meaningful? So when I asked, and I've met with CFIB on different occasions, I said, give me a list of the actual legislation or the issue in New Brunswick for your business that's causing you grief. Because that's what I want to analyze. When I talk to the business agents and they say, we can't compete. You know, the provinces aren't treating us fairly, particularly they can't do business in Quebec, they can't do business in Newfoundland, they say Nova Scotia's not bad, but we don't have the same ability to bid contracts in these areas as they have to bid contracts in New Brunswick. So why is that? They said, well, our rules don't reflect the same fair playing field. And I said to them, you write the rules. Because you want to be able to bid and compete in different provinces. You won't put blocks around the province that are going to impact your ability to compete. So you write the rules. So they're good for business, they're good for you to be able to go from different provinces, and it allows you to create more work, which ultimately hires more people. The focus is going to be removing the barriers for private sector to invest once again in our province.
Hi, Blaine. I have a question around the double taxation in New Brunswick. My understanding is that New Brunswick is the only province in the country that actually charges double when anybody invests in a second property, like an apartment building or a second residence or anything like that. I'm just wondering if what you would do differently than what's currently on the policy.
So I think it's an unfair tax. I think that and I need to understand the depth of the double tax. I've been told by people, well, it really, years ago, the tax rates were the same, but then and I don't know how many years ago it was, that a residential tax credit was brought in place. And so it actually reduced the rate for homeowners. And so, because we all call it double tax, and that's certainly how I believe it too, that it is unique to New Brunswick. If the same building, you know, given what the tax rates were here versus another province, you'd pay more taxes here. And so that's wrong. So my goal, and we'd started that. In 2012, we had a 4-year program that went from 12 to 16, and that continued. And it was basically to reduce it. It went from a 2 times down to a 1.77. And the goal would be to continue it. It isn't something you can do overnight because it's a big revenue issue for the province. But as you manage the expenses, as you look at opportunities to reduce taxes, it's kind of an opportunity for people to invest more as you start to reduce their cost of doing business. And that is definitely a cost of doing business, a bottom line cost of doing business. Property tax we already had reduced back, and it was for 16,000 small businesses. And I remember, you know, you'll see on one of the tax ads talks about reducing property taxes for big business. That was a $34 million program. $6 million of the 34 would be categorized as big business. $3 million of that 6 was NB Power and NB Liquor. $28 million were the 16,000 small businesses throughout the province that benefited from that tax reform. That was all canceled and repealed. So if we're going to continue to tax people that work, we're going to continue to lay taxes on people that work 60, 70 hours a week to run their business, our province will not survive. Because we just can't keep taxing the hand that's feeding us. And I told the Premier in the legislature the story about the golden goose. I'm not sure that he appreciated that, but it was about the fact that we keep taxing people that are generating the economy in our province. Pretty soon, you don't have that economic, and we're seeing it. All economic indicators, all factors are pointing to that. Less investment, less private sector money flowing. We've got to turn that down. We're holding here, I was going to just comment briefly because the Atlantic Chambers have, you know, put together something for us, the title I Choose Growth Too. And you know, this is pretty interesting because it talks about a private sector driven economy, which certainly I've talked about this morning and the issues around that. It talks about responsible resource development, and I've given my views on that, and I am supportive of that. Improved export performance, you know, we are an export driven province. And the latest, although the latest steel and tariffs and aluminum that the U.S. have hit might not hit New Brunswick directly, but indirectly, it'll likely have an impact. And when you look at the current forestry plan, when you look at that and you say, well, why are we paying a duty for our forest products going into the U.S.? If our practices are not suitable, if our practices are not compatible with a fair market condition, then we need to change our practices, because paying duties to go into the U.S. is not the answer. That money needs to stay in New Brunswick. And the Auditor General had put together in 2015 a study on, here are the things that she thought were an issue in related to our forestry practice. We'll go through every one of those and analyze best practice. And I want people in the forestry world to come, be it an environmental side, the replenishment side, the industry side, to come. I want to establish the best practices in forestry. I want to look at agriculture and how do we expand. We have land. What are we doing with it? Hundreds of acres of land, thousands of acres of land, sitting dormant, not doing anything. How do we generate and work with what we have? And I solidly believe no government will invent it on the way through. But you build an organization in the system, you build an organization dedicated to economic prosperity in this province, that they build a succession plan, they have the right people inside that are looking every day for niche opportunities anywhere in this province. And when a government comes in, they say, we're working on these top 5 priorities, and here's the probability of success, and here's where we can put the best bang for the buck to help pay for services. And here's a region that needs support, but more importantly, here's an option to help that region help themselves. Let's not have a political distribution model. Let's have an economic distribution model that regions help us sustain themselves, and they help us rebuild the communities that our province is so proud of. I'm tired of schools closing. I'm tired of hospitals closing. I want to see a province where schools are filling up, not going down. And when you shut down these facilities, and people talk about this sort of thing, when you shut down these facilities, the community dies. My little community has 7 people in it, and 3 are my relatives. And I got the majority support during the leadership. But the point is, we cannot save every community, but we can't lose every community either. From as simple things as covered bridges, we have a guy who builds them around the world, lives in Albert County, the Moncton area, has an office, timber restoration, and we won't let him touch a bridge, even if he gives it to us. How stupid is that? He said, I'll give it to you. You can see what we do around the world. We're tearing down these little gems that we could set up as a tourism attraction. How many bridges, covered bridges, can you find in New Brunswick? Where's Waldo? How many can you find? How many ferries can you cross when you travel to Brunswick? How many little stores can you drop in and find a can of sardines? You know, the things that'll build New Brunswick back to the picture province, back to the province that people want to see and experience once again. I am tired of people saying, I drove through New Brunswick once on my way to Nova Scotia or PEI. Well, I don't want to put roadblocks up, but we've got to get them off the highways.